Will you let me know when you're ready? Okay.
Mayor, we're ready.
Do we have an audience on Zoom?
Link. So
Oh, okay.
we may see people joining here.
Okay. All right, let's get started. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. This is the City of Fairway, our monthly City Council meeting for Monday, September 12th, 2022, 6:30 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and I have two announcements, and Nathan has one. I'd like to remove item number 10, the executive session, from the agenda. It is not needed this evening. And the second thing I had, in your box, if you haven't picked it up yet, is the league letter, the publication. Has a great article in it entitled How Kansas Cities Are Spending Their ARPA Dollars. And I think it's well written, and it gives a broad perspective, so please take a look at that. Okay, Nathan?
Okay, I'm actually going to add a third announcement here. For anyone who is watching on YouTube, the link for the Zoom format has been corrected, so if you wanted to participate via Zoom, you can go back to the website and hit that link and be taken to Zoom. I have two corrections for the packet. One is for the tree board appointee. She's actually a resident of Ward 4, not Ward 3, so that'll be corrected on the official appointment. And then the other item, it was on the claims and appropriation. There were two bills that were showing to be paid to GFL for the same amount, and they were both listed as the August invoice, but one of those was actually September. They had different invoice numbers. It's just the description said August for both. So
they were identical amounts, which causes somebody like me to.
Yeah, yeah, not a duplicate payment. Just the description, the notes. It should. Yes. So what just came around had the corrected version of it.
Oh, did something come around? Oh, the red folder. Okay. Yeah, it passed right by me. Is that it? Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First on the agenda for our business this evening are the monthly reports of the standing committees. The fire chief, Steve Chick, is not here this evening, so we will let the Consolidated Fire District Number 2 reports stand as written. The Committee of the Whole, Administration and Finance, Nathan?
Yes, we did meet on the 31st. However, we didn't have any administration items to discuss. For the finance side of things, we did do one final review of the draft 2023 budget, which we will go over here again later this evening. And I did just want to make a comment here. As we go through the budget process and as we're looking at the different sources of revenue we have, one of them we pay close attention to is sales tax. And I know there's a lot of question out there about, does Fairway receive sales tax just from the brick and mortar stores, or do we receive sales tax from online sales? And the answer is yes. To the second, we do receive online sales as well. And just as as an observation, at the start of the pandemic, a lot of our purchasing habits switched from brick and mortar to online orders, and that had a big impact on what is referred to as the compensating use tax. And so there are some who liken that to the Amazon tax, because that's a lot of the revenues that we come in, or that we see through compensating use is through Amazon. But it's also if you have items that you purchase and have it delivered from Nebraska Furniture Mart or an out-of-town grocery store, that sales tax is paid to the destination, which would be to Fairway. So that has had a big impact on our sales tax revenues. And just to articulate that, at the beginning of the year in January, we had our first $200,000 sales tax monthly distribution. That was the first time that Fairway has ever seen a $200,000 plus deposit, and so far this year we've seen 5. So that tells you that sales tax right now is still very strong. And if you look at this this month for August, last month I should say for the financials, we brought in over $210,000 in sales tax, and we had budgeted initially for about $153,000. So sales tax numbers have been trending very strong, really since the beginning of the pandemic, which was opposite of what everyone's fear was that sales tax was going to drop to near zero. So that fear never did materialize. So just want to point that out. We'll go over the budget and the revenue neutral rate resolution later on in the agenda.
Any questions for Nathan? Or either admin or finance? All right, thank you, Nathan. The police, JP, Chief?
I will let my report stand. I feel like I have to say lock your doors. We're
Please
doing
do.
better. We're doing better. We just recently had some events that occurred over the last weekend, and I know that it'll be reflected in next month's packet, but citizens and RPD worked really closely together. We had an individual that was breaking into homes under construction, and that subject was taken into custody within 24 hours because of a bunch of cooperation with video and a lot of really good hustle from Officer Johnson. So he is in jail right now. He can't get out unless he comes up with $25,000. So that is a success story, and I don't want to wait to put that out.
Thank you. Very, 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 very good. We know the officers are working very, very diligently. Have we made any strides in adding the bicycle use in the evenings yet and nights?
They, at this point, we've had to borrow a bike, and
Okay.
right now we don't have one.
Okay.
Right now, but I don't want to say that we're not going to be continuing to borrow one. Along those same lines is we are looking to expand bicycle patrol again within the city. But we looked at bikes, police bikes, and it's a year wait almost to get a bike. And so we're ordering one. I was hoping to be like, oh yeah, well, you know what we did? We went out and started up our bike patrol. But that might be a next year thing.
Who are we
unfortunately.
borrowing from?
What's that?
What city are we borrowing?
Mission. And
Okay.
other cities have bike patrols around us.
Right.
So,
But
we'll
I wanna
borrow
thank-
whoever.
I want to
Whoever's.
thank the mayor for
Okay.
loaning us a bike.
Yeah, everyone's been very supportive. And of course, all of the agencies up here work so well together that we're back and forth
Yeah,
continually.
I know you are. And that's one thing that makes Northeast Johnson County a desirable place to live. We know that. Thank you. Any questions for the chief?
Yeah, I've got one quick question. For the list of occurrences, I don't see any dates or times. Did we move away from that for some reason?
No, it might have just been a transfer issue
Okay.
on that,
And-
where I didn't catch that. I apologize.
And I don't remember last month, but
Yeah.
clearly that's helpful. Just
Yeah,
give that
sorry.
timeline. No
I
problem.
can reissue that if you'd like. Or
No problem. Just wanted to ask if
it was all last month.
perfect. Thanks.
Chief, I'm curious, the individual that was arrested for breaking into homes under construction, was that person operating in other cities besides Fairway? or-
Yes. Yeah, he was actually taken into custody at a restaurant in Northeast Johnson County.
Okay. So we weren't the sole target of his,
No.
Her
And it
illegal
wasn't just,
activities.
it was all over the place.
thank you.
Oh, I have a question too, Chief.
Hi.
Hi. I noticed month after month somebody gets picked up for something and they're in possession of marijuana or drug paraphernalia. Are those folks arrested or offered citations?
It
If they're
varies.
not deep-
It
it's
varies
not
on
deep.
the it varies on additional offenses or the circumstances around that arrest. If there's other circumstances involved, typically that's just a notice to appear unless we're processing that individual.
Do we know if those folks are coming from Missouri where it is legal?
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I would imagine it's from all over, but I haven't looked at exactly where they live. But I can definitely look into that.
I'm just curious because it seems like we're right close to the state line, so I just wonder how that's affecting our community.
I don't think it's, a lot of those arrests have been internal within Fairway.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to Public Works. Bill?
Thank you, Mayor. We did meet in August. We went over the results of the PCI survey. All in all, our streets are doing pretty good.
You might define PCI for the audience.
Pavement Condition Index, where they went through and scanned all of our streets and give us a rating on 0 to 100 where we rank. Ours were done, and we have not done our capital improvement projects for this year yet, and we were right at 60. And if we would have done our capital improvement projects, we would have been 62 or 63, and we strive to be like 65 or 70. So we're pretty close, and I think within a couple of years we should be into the sweet spot where we'd like to be. Other than that, I will answer any questions that anyone might have.
Any questions, council?
Bill, I had a question from a resident, and maybe it's on Howe and Glenfield and North Lockton, there being the mill and overlay is starting, and you were nice to put a door hanger. They read the door hanger that the project was going to last almost till the end of the year, and I'm thinking they misread that perhaps.
No, that the contract lasts till December 15th, I believe, so they have that amount of time to get the contract done. But no, I'm guessing they'll be done within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Well, that's what I assumed, since they're starting now, so I was a little surprised when they said December.
No, they
something.
just put the end date on the contract.
Gotcha. All right, thank you. Now I can answer correctly.
Anyone else? Okay, Parks and Rec. Bryce?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. Number 5. The 2022 pool season has come to a close, and we ended on a very nice weekend. A little cool for most pool swimmers because it was a little less attended, but still on a positive note. Our newsletter did come out for the fall lineup, fall and winter, so you should have that, I would assume, delivered to you to your houses already. I've heard a few people have gotten theirs already. But all in all, I'll have the full report for the pool season next month ready to roll.
Bryce, I know that these aren't the season-ending numbers, but council, if you review the revenue numbers for the pool and program-related items, year-to-date, you're $40,000 over budget. Good work. Thank you. Any questions for Bryce? No? Okay. We'll move on to the monthly reports of the special committees. Tree Board. Nathan?
No report, but I think they're looking to schedule a meeting here before too long.
It's already scheduled for next month, or this month, excuse me.
Yeah, September.
Next week.
Next week, yeah. At noon on Wednesday, I think.
September snuck up on me. I'm still living
Wednesday?
in August.
Okay. Here at City Hall. All right, next on the agenda is public comment for consent agenda items only. I will read those into the record before I call for public comment. They are: A, approve minutes of previous regular and special city council meetings. B, approve claims and appropriations, ordinance number 1769 for August of 2022. Approve the purchase of a police vehicle. And just an editorial comment on my part, that purchase is part of the standard 3-year rotation of the patrol cars. And that's what the city policy is. D, approve my appointment to the tree board. That is Elizabeth Pishney from Ward 4. E, approve citywide HVAC maintenance agreement with Santa Fe Heating and Cooling. F, approve APWA reaccreditation agreement and application. Is there any public David, can I help you? Okay. Is there any public comment on any of the consent agenda items?
Mayor, while you're waiting for that, I just would want to mention that we did make a few non-substantive additions to the city council minutes earlier today just for some clarification. So those have been added into the ones that will be signed.
Okay. Anyone on Zoom, Nathan, that wants to make public comment? All right, we'll close this section of public comment. These items are determined to be routine enough to be acted on in a single motion. However, this does not preclude discussion. If a council member requests, an item may be removed from the consent agenda for further consideration and a separate motion. Does anyone on the council wish to remove any particular item or items? Okay, is there a motion concerning the consent agenda?
I move to approve consent agenda items A through F.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve consent agenda items A through F. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Passes unanimously. All right, we'll start the crux of our meeting here under new business.
Mayor, can I didn't catch who seconded that motion. Okay, thank you.
Okay. I would like to open the public hearing for this evening to exceed the revenue neutral rate and the 2023 budget hearing. The order that I would like to follow this discussion is initially I will read items A, B, and C. They're all related to those two topics. I will read those into the record. And then Nathan will make a PowerPoint presentation for us this evening. And I believe there was a copy out by the door. If you didn't get a copy of it, please go out and get one. There's a lot of good information in there. The second, after that review of the PowerPoint, I will open the floor for public comment. I would like to hear from anyone who has comments before I turn then the discussion over to the City Council. Okay, item A, public hearing to exceed the revenue neutral rate and 2023 public hearing. Item B, consider resolution 2022E, a resolution of the City of Fairway, Kansas to levy a property tax rate exceeding the revenue neutral rate. And item C, consider 2023 budget and 2023 through 2027 capital improvement plan. Just a administrative note to the council. The instructions from the state are that the votes on these items must be a roll call vote, so that we will be handling that this way this evening. Okay, Nathan, would you like to make the presentation?
Sure. Just a couple of things before we start. Just, again, sort of a procedural thing. Historically, cities in Kansas have always been required to hold a budget public hearing annually. And so what happened with last year with the legislation that was passed, they created what's called the revenue neutral rate, and in their legislation it required a separate hearing to exceed the revenue neutral rate. However, from a procedural standpoint, we can do these at the same time. So this is two hearings in one. And just from a technical standpoint, the vote for both the revenue neutral rate process, or to exceed the revenue neutral rate, and the 2023 budget will occur within the public hearing. Normally, how it works is you open the public hearing, you take your public comment, you close the public hearing, and then the governing body would take action. But the law does require that the votes actually occur within the public hearing. And then copies of the minutes, which will outline the roll call vote, I need to include those as I submit the budget to the county, who then turns around and submits it to the state. So just from a procedural standpoint, that's why we're having two hearings in one tonight, as you can see there on the agenda item. Okay, I promise there aren't a lot of slides, and I won't go too quickly, so if there's someone from the governing body who has any questions as we're going through this, please feel free to ask, and then again, we'll provide opportunity for the public comment as we wrap up this presentation. So the first thing I just wanted to put out there, and this is in the budget document that was out there as well, the one that's got the big leaves on the front. In that document, there is this calculation of how do you figure out what your taxes are for your property. So you can see there for the 2023 budget process, you look at the 2022 appraised values, and in Fairway this year, the average appraised value is $546,000.
Nathan, is that a typo then? That should read 2022?
It's for the 23 budget. Yes, but I'm sorry, it should say a 2022 appraised value. Yeah.
Okay.
As of January 1. Yep. So the assessed valuation percentage is 11.5%. So you take that times your appraised value and you arrive at an assessed value of just over $62,000. So to determine what the tax liability would be, and remember there are multiple taxing jurisdictions. You've got the county, the state, the park district, the community college, et cetera. All of them are going to use the same process to get to the assessed valuation. However, all of those taxing jurisdictions are going to have different mill levies, so that will result in a different portion of your tax bill going to those individual jurisdictions. So in Fairway, our proposed budget has a mill rate of 19.928 mills, and that's per $1,000 of assessed valuation, so you can see the calculation there. And that means on the average home in Fairway, the annual tax liability is about $1,250 with a monthly liability of $104. So this is hard to see up on the big screen. I think it's okay for the members of the governing body, but this chart just shows you how your property tax bill is broken down. And a lot of times people just assume that all of your tax dollars are going to the city. The reality of the situation is that only 16% of your tax bill is Fairway's tax allotment of your full tax bill. So 47% goes to the school district, 1% to the state, 2% to the park district, 3% to the library, 7% to the community college, 9% to the fire district, and then 15% to Johnson County government make up the balance. But again, 16% of your tax bill is what comes to Fairway, so that's what we're talking about tonight. Sure.
For the active adult community, the taxes on that property are paid at the property as its value today. So like how does property taxes work for that?
So I guess whatever the value was, so Rich, you're going to have to help me out here because it's going to run together in my mind. I guess I can't answer 2023, but we start because the development agreement starts officially January 1 of 2024. So whatever their valuation was on January 1 of 2022, those would be the taxes that would be levied for 2023. So whatever their assessed value was then, and that really, so 2023 is just kind of an anomaly because starting in 2024 and beyond, that was set by the development agreement. So whatever it was in 2023, whatever it was on January 1 of 2022, you can figure probably a slight increase just because of the increases overall for that. But so those taxes would be paid this year as normal.
That means basically nothing started yet.
Correct. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the revenue neutral rate, which was born out of Senate Bill 13 in 2021. And the revenue neutral rate is defined as the property tax rate for the current tax year that would generate the same amount of property tax revenue, or dollars, as levied the previous year using the current year's total assessed valuation. So basically, if you look at the next bullet, it kind of puts it in layman's terms. It means that a government levies the same exact amount of property tax that they collected the previous year. So it doesn't account for an increase in development. So, for example, in Lenexa or Shawnee, as those cities are expanding westward, there's no contemplation for collecting revenue from property tax on new development in the Senate bill. It only keeps it the exact same regardless of what happens. It also doesn't account for inflation, which of course we're all familiar with now. As a property tax funding methodology relies on the growth to generate additional revenue to offset inflationary increases in expense. If a tax revenue philosophy is employed, no new property tax revenue will be available to offset increasing costs, which will necessitate either a reduction or elimination of services or an inability to maintain assets. So it's like anything, if your revenue stays the same but your expenses continue to rise, you're going to have to look at either cutting services or cutting maintenance if you are not able to maintain both and for the same amount of value that you brought in the year before. So the philosophy of the revenue neutral rate suggests it's possible to buy today's goods at last year's prices. Now, I don't know how many of you have had that luck of being able to do that this year, but it's very difficult. And it's from a budgeting perspective, it makes planning very difficult. So to liken this experience with property tax, with what they're proposing, to what they're proposing with sales tax, if the cost of an ice cream cone goes up, does that mean the city should lower its sales tax? And those are philosophical questions that we have to ask ourselves and that are being essentially forced upon us from the legislation that occurred. So if you're trying to maintain steady, there's a question of whether or not, you can apply it the same way to the property tax or to sales tax. So let's look at what the actual proposals or the actual revenue neutral rate for Fairway would be. If you look at the 2021-2022 assessed valuation, we were at $112 million in assessed valuation. Our mill rate was 19.928, the same as we're proposing to go forward, and the total property tax levy was just over $2.2 million. So if we were to apply the revenue neutral rate, it would drop our mill levy to 18.281 to maintain the same dollar amount. What we're proposing is to maintain the mill levy flat, which we have done now. This would be the 7th consecutive year. And you can see the total levy will be 2.4, or an increase of about $200,000 to both general fund and debt service, because the property tax goes to both funds. And you can see the average homeowner in Fairway, again, based on that $446,000 average, the average homeowner for 2023 will see an increase of their city portion by about $110 annually, or about $9 a month. So that's the impact of if you all pass a budget tonight that keeps the mill levy flat, and it does not lower the mill levy to the revenue neutral rate of 18.821. So here's the calendar, and I won't go through this in great detail, but our process starts in March, as the council is well aware. That is the first meeting at the end of March when we start talking about the following year's budget. April to May, the department heads are creating those budgets and holding committee meetings, which are comprised of at least 4 council members, as well as some of the committees have members of the public who also participate. By the end of May, the budgets are due to me, and then I prepare a draft of the future year's budget, which is presented at the Administration and Finance Committee. In July, we hold the Budget Public Forum. This year it was part of our City Council meeting. And then the Administration and Finance Committee reviews the general fund budget again and previews a draft of the capital improvement program and all other fund budgets, which we'll talk about in a minute. August, the Administration and Finance Committee receives their final review. So you can see here there's the Administration and Finance Committee, at least on 3 separate occasions, sees the budget in draft form. And those drafts are also made available on our website for the public. All of these meetings are public meetings, and they are all posted as a part of our meeting notice. And then we arrive here in September, where we have the budget hearing, the public hearing to exceed the revenue neutral rate, as well as the 2023 budget hearing. So just some highlights of the general fund budget. And so the general fund is the operating fund of the city. It's where we fund the day-to-day business of the city. The mill levy rate remains the same in the proposed budget at 19.928. And again, that's for the 7th consecutive year. The general fund budget, excluding our reserves, has increased 4.41% from 2022. I think it's important to note that that increase is just about half of what our current inflation rate is. So as we've prepared this budget, it is an increase of spending in 2023, but it is not in tune with the inflation that's going on. And I will tell you, there are some cities in our area, that are increasing significantly more than this because of the issues that we're seeing with inflation. Fortunately, as a smaller city, we've been able to rein in a few things just to make sure that we're keeping a handle on inflation. Our total unrestricted reserves will be $1 million, just over, and it's split between the general fund reserve, which has about $355,000 in it, and then the balance is sitting in the equipment reserve fund. And just so you know, the reason it has to be split like that is because under Kansas law, cities cannot spend a penny more than what they budget for in the general fund. So if we run into a situation where we have an increase in the number of transfers we're able to do at the end of the year, or if we have some unforeseen circumstance that goes beyond our contingency fund, this allows for some money to be spent in those areas, because even if we take money from the general fund and we transfer it to, say, the capital improvement fund, that counts against us as an expense in the general fund. So we have to be able to account for that. So by leaving about $350,000 in the general fund, it gives us what I call some depth in the budget so that we can do some end-of-year transfers if we have the funds available. But if we leave too much in there, then it ties up too much of the mills, and then it reduces our ability to be able to spend what we need to out of the general fund. So that's why that gets split the way it does into the two separate funds. Health insurance, and just from the general fund reserve, the policy adopted by the council in 2018 was to strive for a 20% fund balance for the general fund, and that does not include transfers or the contingency fund. And right now, in the budget document here somewhere, I think it shows we're just over 20% on our reserve, so between 20 and 21%. So we have met that target. Health insurance increases for 2023 average between 6 and 8% between the plan offerings the city gives. And the city, as a part of the budget process we were going through this year, the city council, through the Administration and Finance Committee, opted to increase contributions from 80 to 85% toward those plans, and that was effective on July 1 of 2022 because our medical plans run from July 1 to June 30th each year. Transfers from the general fund include $10,000 to the equipment reserve fund, just as to provide for our future equipment purchases, $35,000 for the Shawnee Indian Mission Fund, and $463,000 to the Capital Improvement Fund to fund larger capital projects. Specifically for the police department in 2023, the police budget includes the addition of one officer. They also will be purchasing additional license plate readers and traffic cameras. The Public Works Department budget includes funds for a new salt dome door and a liquid salt sprayer. So we do not have any of those in our fleet right now. This will be a first-time addition for 2023. Parks and Recreation budget includes funds for new pool furniture. That furniture is original from the pool renovation in 2015 and gets obviously some pretty heavy use, as well as some paint and tile work in the zero depth area of the swimming pool. We're also looking at some larger pool liner improvements, so some of that money might be pooled with some of the CIP money as we look at how we're going to move forward with the swimming pool. And I apologize, this is a little hard to see from a distance on the big screen there, but this is just a summary of the budget changes from 2022 to the proposed 2023. Again, you can see there the overall increase is about 4.41%, and you can see the various impacts based on the departments there, as well as the transfers on the bottom. Our debt service fund, we have a total debt service obligation in 2023 of just under $750,000. And debt is paid through a variety of sources, including the 2014 sales tax, which funds the renovations for the swimming pool, as well as the lease purchase of our public works facility. Stormwater utility fund, which is currently paying debt for the Mission Road Bridge. And then the debt service fund, which holds the debt service for the city hall renovations. And I should say there is some of our bonds do spread across multiple funds, but that just gives you an example. Again, the total debt service is just under $750,000 for 2023. Other funds, and they are spelled out in the big document that was outside, as well as what's on our website. We do have a number of other funds. The stormwater utility fee, again, it pays for bond payments for stormwater-related projects. The street sweeper and lease purchase payments come from there, as well as other actual stormwater-related projects. The tree fund covers, or when there are funds available for that, covers the right-of-way tree trimming and additional plantings as available. The tree fund is funded through violations of the public tree protection ordinance, as well as voluntary buyouts for right-of-way trees. That money goes into this fund. It can only be used. So essentially, the revenues that we acquire for trees being removed or violations of the tree protection ordinance for right-of-way trees, that money goes into this fund. We allow it to accrue until there's enough money to pay for the annual tree trimming, which we're not going to quite get there in 2023, so that money will probably be held over to 2024, when we will likely have enough funds to cover the annual tree trimming cost. The Shawnee Indian Mission Fund covers the operational expenses for the site, and the Shawnee Indian Mission Foundation provides money for a majority of this fund. The fund is about $118,000 for 2023, so you can see our contribution less any revenue that the site generates. The balance comes from the Shawnee Indian Mission Foundation. The 2014 sales tax, again, is for the lease purchase of the Public Works facility, debt service for the swimming pool project, and then any other park capital projects as they may come. The Equipment Reserve Fund is, just as I said, is used to set money aside for future large equipment purchases. We did this with the police radios a few years ago. The police department had budgeted transfers of $25,000 for 3 consecutive years into the Equipment Reserve Fund because we knew the cost was going to be about $75,000. That way it's just not a big hit at once, or sort of saving up for it, and then we are allowed to make those purchases without such a significant impact on the budget. For 2023, our capital improvement projects includes street maintenance on 53rd Street, Sunrise, Lockton, Delmar, Fontana Drive, Granada, and Granada Lane, as well as Brookridge and Sheridan, which were originally scheduled for 2022. However, because the bids came back so high, we elected to push those 2 streets back. They were the best looking streets in the group to be done this year, so those will be a priority for 2023. And hopefully inflation will have settled a bit, and we'll be back within budget for capital improvement projects. In addition to the street maintenance, we're also still working on solutions for the pool liner repair replacement, as well as the Peterson Park restroom, and of course the marked patrol unit, police unit that you just approved on consent agenda. The total capital improvement budget for 2023 is just over $1.3 million. If we look at the 5-year capital improvement program, our total is more than $5 million for the next 5 years. The only revenue stream to this fund, to fund those $5 million worth of work, is a half-cent sales tax approved by voters in 2012. And that half-cent sales tax gets split between the capital improvement fund and the debt service fund. Each of those funds receives about $150,000 a year in sales tax right now. That number has been building as time has gone on. The remaining money for these projects needs to come in the form of transfers from the general fund. So you can see back a few slides, we talked about how for 2023 we're budgeting $460,000 as a transfer. That's budgeted, plus the $150,000 for $1.3 million worth of work. So that's why, again, just as an example, that's why we have the general fund reserve sitting there, so that as the year goes on, we hope that our revenues will be higher than we budgeted and our expenses will be lower than we budgeted, and then we can make some additional transfers over to the capital improvement fund to fully fund those priority 1 projects that we have there. So we are in a fortunate position now that for the 2023 budget, we are showing that there will be a little under $500,000 left in that fund with the budgets with the transfers that we've identified here. So we have just the slightest of cushion in there. But if our ability to ever make those additional transfers goes away, we don't have a funding source to cover our major infrastructure work that we need to do. And this isn't new. This is something that, going back to before 2012, even before I was city administrator, I've always equated our capital improvement program budget with the way we fund the revenue for it, it's like a garden hose on a forest fire. So, we are fortunate to be able to do these transfers right now with the revenues that are coming in, because without those revenues, we would be having a much more difficult conversation about how to be handling our CIP projects. So with that being said, the last slide here is just how we compare with other cities in Kansas. And I think Fairway's done a good job historically of running a pretty lean organization from a budgetary perspective. And as you can see here, Fairway is has the third lowest city mill levy rate of all second-class cities in the state. Mission is lowest, followed by Gardner. So when you look at how cities make up their budgets, you've really got property taxes, sales taxes, and then user fees, which would be like pool memberships, building permits, that sort of thing. We do not have a large commercial base in Fairway, so that puts us a little bit heavier reliant on property tax. If we had a Johnson Drive, like Mission does, we would probably be collecting more sales tax proportionally than what we are now, and therefore there's able to be a better balance on mill levy versus sales tax. Same with Gardner. So if you look at this, we have the fifth lowest mill levy rate for cities of the first and second class. So that's your Overland Parks, your Wichitas, your Topekas, all the way down to cities the size of Fairway. Fifth lowest in the entire state. So when you look at that, that's a pretty good place for Fairway to be sitting. Again, just looking at the second class cities, and now if you look at the overall mill levy rate, so this includes the fire district, the schools, the county, the state, all of them were the fifth lowest for cities of the second class and seventh lowest for the first and second class cities throughout the state. And again, classes are based on population size. And that information is available through the League of Kansas Municipalities. So hopefully that shows that the City Council and staff are being good stewards of the revenue that we receive from all of our sources, let alone property tax. So with that, Mayor, I will be glad to turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Nathan. Excellent presentation. Very, very, very well done. All right, I would like to open the floor for public comment on the information that you have just seen, or any other comments that you would like to make about the 2023 budget or the revenue neutral rate concept that the state is now implementing with the cities. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak? Keith, if you'll please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, we'd appreciate it.
Keith Busick, 5607 Shadwick Road, and as always, in the interest of full disclosure, my wife Kellyanne Busick is council member Ward 1. Given the almost complete lack of interest in this public hearing from the folks in Fairway, I think anything I say is going to be rendered almost meaningless over here, but I'll read my comments or make my comments for the record in any event. In 1978, the voters in California approved Proposition 13, constitutional amendment that limited the collection of property taxes to 1% of the sales price of a home, and just as importantly, limited annual increases to no more than 2% of the tax over there. Now, in the run-up to this is also known as the Jarvis Amendment. In the run-up to that election, we heard the exact same arguments over here, that we have among the lowest taxes in Orange County or Los Angeles County or Contra Costa County or any place else in California, that we need this continued property tax revenue if we're going to maintain the same services. And if we don't get these, then we're going to have to cut back on services or let our people go. And then finally, they said if Prop 13 passes, we're going to have to terminate teachers, close our schools, fire protection, police protection, other safety measures are going to suffer, our streets are going to fall into disrepair, we'll have to close the parks and the beaches and everything else. And none of those dire predictions came to pass. None of those came to pass. In fact, Prop 13 withstood constitutional challenges. Both the California Supreme Court and the United States Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality. I know we have a few lawyers in the room over here. They upheld unanimously the constitutionality of Prop 13. It's been in effect for 45 years now because it works. In fact, it's so successful that more than 12 states, at least 12 states, followed the same approach to property tax collections over there. And the reason that it works and it's so appealing is that taxing authorities know exactly how much money they have to spend. And no more than that. 1% sales price of a property, no more than 2% increases after that. And taxpayers have a predictable property tax rate. They know what they're going to pay year after year after year. I mean, the reason we're here is because the ironically named Senate Bill 13, right? Senate Bill 13, Prop 13. We're here because of that. Now, what I'm hearing from my elected officials is that because of the truth in taxation legislation that was passed by overwhelmingly bipartisan majorities and signed by the governor, is that it was intended to bring down the tax burden on the homeowners and other property owners in the state of Kansas. In fact, I've heard that more than half of the counties in Kansas in the next couple of months are going to send out bills that are either lower or have a property tax bill increase of no more than 3%. And unfortunately, Johnson County is not one of them. According to the notice that we got, our proposed tax bill from Johnson County, when they send it out, it's going to be about 5% higher than it was last year. That's 2.5 times higher than it would be in California and many other states that put a limit on this. So I guess the question, I'm asking here is, Kansas has one of the highest property tax rates in the country. They rank 37 out of 50 states, according to Smart Asset Advisors and Wallet Hub. An effective tax rate, property tax rate, 1.4%. 1.4%. That is very, very, very high. So how is it that states like California and many others are able to maintain all these services? I mean, California, their highways are among, I've lived there for half my life. Their highways are among the best in the country. The public schools are the envy of the country, and the California State College and University system is the envy of the world. I just don't understand how states like this are able to do this in all kinds of economic environments, including hyperinflationary times. Prop 13 was passed in 1978. The nation experienced hyperinflation in the early 80s, and California did not fall into the ocean. In fact, its economy is so robust, if it were a country, and you've heard this statistic before, it would rank the 7th or 8th largest economy in the world. So these jurisdictions must be doing something right. So the question is, why can't we do what over half the counties, at least as a starting point, half the counties are doing, and limiting our year over year a tax bill increase to something that's at least under 3%, like half the counties are doing over here? That's the question I have over here. I know it's rhetorical. I understand this. But other jurisdictions are doing it. Why is Fairway not doing it? I don't know if I've exceeded my 4 minutes left, but I think those are all the... So I think Senate Bill 13, I think, is the first, if you will, warning out of Topeka. And unless these property tax bills in Kansas start going down, I think more severe measures are coming to Kansas. That train may not be coming next year or the year after that, but that train is definitely going to visit Kansas sometime in the future if these property tax bills are not coming down. It is a huge burden on Kansans. I think that's it. Thank you.
Keith, before you sit down,
Sure.
I'd like to answer your question, but first I want to ask you a question. Are you aware that the state and all of the school districts and all of the auxiliary parts of their taxing entity exempted themselves from the SB
Yes.
13?
Yes. Yep.
I find that interesting.
I'm aware of that. But
Okay.
let me just pose, my comment to that, just to build on what I was saying. How is it that states like Washington and Texas and Alaska and Wyoming and Florida that have no income tax whatsoever, are able to have booming and thriving economies? And
Well-
other states like New Hampshire, for example, have no income tax, no sales tax. They rely on property tax revenues, and they also do exceedingly well.
And I do understand your questions, and they're logical questions. However, we can't answer them without delving into each individual's state's process.
Sure.
But I will tell you this about Fairway, and this is the comment that I wanted to make. Now, this is my area of expertise, finance. And when I began my career with the city in 2009, we immediately implemented the zero-based budgeting process. And to this day, we are still following that process. And that process is what enables us to keep our budget as lean and mean as it is, because we start over each year and build each department's budget based on the services that the citizens want. And we start at zero. What does it cost? We don't just take a budget and say, well, we spent, I don't know, $2 million in 2022 on public works. So therefore, we're just going to add 4.4% and spend that in 2023. That is not what we do. And that's why you see some of the departments, for example, the police department, you'll see it fluctuate a little bit more each year. It's because we start over every year. It's not an easy process for the department heads, but they are committed to that process, and we have done it since, 2010. And I think that is what enables us to the presentation that Nathan just gave us. There is no extra in there. And it's why we're able to keep it at 4.4% increase rather than, Nathan gave me some of the numbers. Some of them are increasing theirs 10%. We're not doing that.
I certainly appreciate everything that the city does to keep, as you say, a lean and mean budget. There's no question about that. I tell Kelly every day how grateful we are for the chief and the police program, the police department that we have over here. When the winter rolls around, I always compliment the public works on how the plows are out there right away keeping our streets plowed. There's no question about that, that Fairway does a great job.
And you can say the same thing for admin and for Parks and Rec for what they do.
Sure. I'm just most familiar that when it snows and I want to get out of my driveway,
I know.
I can see
Right.
asphalt
And so
on
my
the street.
question to you is, what service would you like us to eliminate? What service do you think we can eliminate?
Let me answer the question this way, because I don't have the detailed level of knowledge and information that Nathan has, of
Well,
course.
Kelly
up here.
does, because
But-
we provide, just a minute, we provide decision packages for every single service at the committee level. It was on Nathan's calendar that we follow. And if you look at each of the decision packages, you will see what those services are. And they are detailed. Oh, Bill's got a packet that's about that thick. And so if you'll look at that and suggest to either Kelly or myself or to Nathan a service that you think the residents would not miss, I'd like to know which one it is.
Respectfully, I think it's missing the point over here, because the reason the Proposition 13 came about, and this wasn't brought about in Sacramento. The state legislators were not interested in doing this. This was a citizens' initiative. California has the initiative process, so this came from the people. These came from the overburdened taxpayers. Prop 13 came about because hundreds of thousands and millions of people in the state were on the verge of losing their home to taxation that was relentless, going up year after year after year after year, where people were forced to sell their homes or move out of the state. They were literally on the verge of losing their residences because they could not pay this. And so philosophically, I'm saying someone buys a home in California for $1 million, they know their tax bill is going to be $10,000. That's it. With annual increases no more than 2%. And every taxing authority in California, it's not as complex as it is in Kansas. You simply get the bill that's based on that base rate with up to a 2% increase. So we don't know, unless we see a pie chart like that, who's charging this, but how it's allocated. But there is a pool of money regardless, and it goes to those taxing jurisdictions. I'm just saying that California and many, many other states are able to implement something like this and live within a 2% annual increase. Notwithstanding the great job that the folks here are doing, and I acknowledge that. But I'm saying the question should be, what should Fairway and Johnson County and other cities and counties throughout the state be doing so they can get under that 3%, like more than half of Kansas counties are doing? So somebody is doing that. There's nothing, I think, that's particularly unique about Fairway. A lot of these counties are very rural and residential counties that similarly do not have a substantial commercial tax base, and they're able to do that. So you're asking me where I would cut. That's not the question to ask me, because I'm not.
Oh no,
I'm not
we
the
value your opinion, and that's why I'm asking you. And if you can't provide me with an answer, but let's.
Yeah.
Okay, we are not California. Now, I'm talking about Fairway.
Or many other states that have that similar
okay,
approach.
or any other state.
Yeah.
We are 95%, 98% residential. That's where our services are provided from those tax dollars. So if that is limited, where are we going to build a Ford dealership? Where are we going to build, how are we going to get the commercial dollars that the other cities do? I mean, there are a few cities here in northeast Johnson County that have that same issue. It's not just Fairway. And I don't have an answer for that.
I mean, when you get to the point where people can no longer pay their property taxes, everybody's sensitive to where's the money coming from. But
I understand
that. The flip side of that coin, you're going to have people who simply, just like California, that brought about the Jarvis Amendment, where they just reached the end of the line, and they just said, enough is enough. Learn to live within the 1% and the 2% annual increase. And they've done it for nearly half a century now. There's been no attempt, by the way.
Without a pool of money coming from somewhere else, Fairway would die.
Keith, I think your comments are fascinating. I ask the same question every year. How can we limit our tax increases? As Nathan laid out in the presentation, we have three revenue sources. California has the highest, if not the highest, one of the highest state income tax rates in the country. That's where they get their money. You mentioned Texas. They have what's called a severance tax for their oil and gas. That's where they get all their money. You're comparing states, though, to cities. Can we live with a more limited increase? We saw it in the revenue neutral presentation. $200,000 is what we're talking about. I look through our budget. Where can we get $200,000? Where could we cut? If we kept our property tax revenues neutral, where would we come up with that $200,000? We have one of the highest sales tax rates anywhere.
Yes.
I can't see us increasing our sales tax rate to make up for the property tax rate. What's that leave us? Fees on the income side. We've increased fees. We increase them more. That's the only other place we could make up for that revenue difference. So there we say, okay, we can't make up on the revenue side. Where can we cut it on the expense side? $200,000. And I look through our budget, and you can't, forget the decision packages. We see them. It's hard to cut, but what could we do? The biggest place is salaries. That's our biggest item. Sure. We could cut staff. Right now we're talking about hiring more staff in the police department because crime is rising, and we're going to have another, if it pans out, 400 people in Fairway. We need to.
No, there's no if about it.
What's that?
It will pan out.
Well, I mean, they still have to.
Please don't say that.
We still have to find. They have to find people to live there. But I hope it pans out. But we're going to have 400 more people living in Fairway.
I don't want someone to think it's not going to be built.
No, I'm not saying it's not going to. My point is, Public Works, admin. Nathan will tell you our admin department is bursting at the seams with work. Parks and Rec. I'll be quite blunt. That is about the only non-essential function that we provide in our city. But we're going to close our pool. I think our residents who love our pool would say, no, we're not going to close our pool. That's our biggest Parks and Rec expense. We're going to shut down all the programs that are so popular that we've had to hire another Parks and Rec person to keep up with the demand for our programs. Oh, yeah, we can just not have a Parks and Rec department. Now we've cut $200,000 out of the budget. We cannot give our employees raises that come close to matching inflation. Our raises this year probably won't match inflation. So what's that mean? We lose long-term tenured employees because they'll be cherry-picked away by other cities. So we haven't cut a staff, but we've gotten rid of an experienced staff member for a non-experienced staff member who maybe we could pay less, because I just don't see where we can make that up. Oh, excuse me, capital improvements. We already had to cut 2 streets out this year because, unfortunately, because of inflation, our $550,000 budget was only 2/3 of the lowest bid. It was $820,000. We cut out 2 streets. The people on Brookridge and Sheridan would probably love to have their street mill and overlaid this year. They've got to wait till next year. We've got over $1 million of capital improvements next year. We don't have the money to do that unless we have a bang-up year again in fees and sales tax. So actually, quite frankly, the best thing that's happened to us is the pandemic and people buying at home to supplement our minuscule commercial base. So I look at this every year and I say, what can we cut out that would allow us to keep to lower the tax rate and keep our property tax revenues down? And for 8 years, now 9 years, I haven't found it.
So just suppose, as I said, for homeowner in Fairway, if everything, if these hearings go as the taxing jurisdictions anticipate, and they get to exceed the revenue neutral rate, and it turns out to be I think it's about 5.5% increase for Johnson County. Suppose somebody living here is not getting a corresponding 5.5% increase in their pay. They get 1% increase or 0% increase. I mean, what you're saying is something is going to have to give at some particular point. If Fairway cannot cut one single dime out of this, and you have residents here whose budgets do not keep up with the 9%, the slightly over 9% tax increase that Fairway is proposing, and the other jurisdictions as well, well, then something has to give here. And that something is there's going to be some people who are not going to be able to live in Fairway.
Nathan, would you put up the pie chart, please?
There's going to be residents who are going to have to
And there are,
leave
and
Fairway.
to use your California example, there are people fleeing California right and left
But
because
it's not because of property. They may be fleeing one thing, but
well,
it's
they can't
certainly not
afford to
because
live
of
there.
property
Par-
taxes.
You know, the price of buying a home in California is skyrocketing as it has here, but more there. But you know, you have to look at it at Fairway, Keith, Fairway. And if we limit the revenue, we have to limit the expense because we don't budget a deficit. So if there's $200,000 taken out of the revenue side because we did a revenue neutral mill levy, 18.2 versus 19.6 or 7 or 8, what $200,000 of expenses would we shave from the budget? And the challenge is, as the mayor mentioned, because we start at zero and build up with, can we eliminate this service? Yes or no? That's the first question asked. And in each decision packet, what would the impact be if we eliminated or limited that service? Here's an example. We could cut a couple $1,000 out of the budget. We just got our focus on Fairway in the mail, right? It was in color. Jenna, you have it right there. It's in color. Several years ago, it was black and white.
Right.
We saved $4,000. So, we go back to black and white. We look at small ways to save, and you say, well, small ways add up to 200,000. Let's go through the budget next year, not this year, because we've already done it this year, and we've tried to find every place we can to limit our expenditures. And the challenge is, we've got, as the mayor said, what do you call it, a bare bones budget?
Zero-based.
Well, zero base, but it's pretty bare bones. We
Oh,
don't
it
have
is.
we don't have a lot of fluff in our budget. We don't
No.
have a lot of special interest projects in our budget. We don't have any.
We don't have any.
So we just don't have any
So-
fluff in our expenses.
So can people then expect that for the next budget year, there's going to be another $200,000 or $230,000, $250,000?
We can't look into that
Increase?
crystal ball any
Or the
easier
year
than you
after
can.
that, or the year, because at some point.
I don't know.
I hear the case you're making, but, the levee is going to break someplace, and it's going to fall, the burden is going to fall just as it did in California, just as it did in many, many high
All right, Keith.
property tax states.
Keith, we
They don't
can
have the revenue.
We can discuss this all night. If you will look at that pie chart, go talk to the school district and go talk to the state. Ask them why they exempted themselves, because 47% of your tax comes from the school district. Now, I don't want to throw the school district under the bus because I think we have an excellent school district.
Agreed, yes,
I don't have any kids, but I am more than willing to pay into that school district
yes.
for every child that goes there. But they are exempt from this, and the state exempted themselves from this. Fairway is a minuscule part of that. And we've done everything we can do for our part. Maybe you need to go to Topeka or go to the school board meeting and discuss it with them.
I know that similar legislation, similar to Senate Bill 13, was passed in Nebraska. I know it's been in effect for many years in Utah, for example. And the effect of the legislation in Utah is that the property tax burden has gone down over there. And I think that's what Topeka has in mind for the cities and counties across Kansas.
We
is that
can't
these
run
are gonna go down
a
eventually.
city based on I think. We have to base our budget on reality and what it takes to run this city at the level of service that our residents want. And that's what we do.
But for the residents who can't continue to pay higher taxes in their property tax bill, what happens to them? If the city can't cut and many residents can't keep up with these annual increases, that's the reality for them. What happens to those people then? They move to California. Would they move to another? Exactly. They're going to have to leave then. So if Fairway's position is, sorry, if you can't keep up.
Now, Keith,
with
you are
this-
not going to back me into a corner where
I'm not
I am
trying to-
going to say that.
Respectfully, Mayor, I'm
Every
not
city
backing anybody
is
into a corner.
welcome. Any resident is welcome to live in Fairway. And I understand there are individuals on a fixed income, and I know how difficult that is.
And when the resources are exhausted, Fairway's not a
What-
place for them anymore then. I mean,
What-
something is
what
going to have to
gi-
give.
What is your suggestion to help them?
I don't know how we got into a discussion here, but what the mayor said, it all boils down to what the residents want. So I don't disagree with anything that you're saying, but the residents want what we're providing. We absolutely could cut $200,000 from the budget. It would mean not milling and overlaying streets. It would mean not hiring an additional police officer. It would cut something from what the residents want. The residents aren't here complaining in mass.
No, I know, and I said that at the beginning. Apparently, there's a lot of people who don't mind this kind of increase, but we have.
So I said it, multiple times during COVID about different stuff. This is a state issue. This isn't a Fairway issue. You keep mentioning California and Utah and New Hampshire. You're talking about states. This is Fairway.
Keith, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to make public comment on items A, B, or C? All right, we'll close that portion of the public comment, and I'll turn it over to any council member for further discussion or comments, questions for staff on their budgets.
Mayor,
Yes.
I've been a city council member for almost 5 years, and within that time, dozens of my constituents have spoken to me about property taxes in the state of Kansas and in Fairway, and I understand it's a state issue. But I also understand where they're coming from when they've lived here 30 to 40, 50 years and paid their taxes and are good citizens and love living in the city of Fairway. And when we get an increase of just $9 a month, which sounds like a car payment, it's really, you're not enveloping the whole price. You're seeing $9. Well, $9 to some person may be a diabetes medicine, maybe cancer medicine, maybe heart medicine. So someone on a fixed income who's on a literal fixed income is going to have an issue. And the only way they're going to realize not having that issue is to sell their home in the welcoming and inclusive city of Fairway. That's the only way. And it's not going to change. I understand that. But in 2020, since 2020, we've raised our budget $1 million. Are we going to raise it another million in another 4 years? What are we going to do? That's my question for the people in Ward 1 and for the rest of the citizens in Fairway. What are we going to do? And I understand it's the state, but we need to do something to help these people so they don't have to leave their homes and sell their homes because they can't live here anymore. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, Nathan, is there? I'm assuming there was no one on Zoom that wanted to comment during this time? Okay. I think we are ready to vote. So I will read for the record again. We will vote on item A, roll call vote. Oh, thank you. Item B, consider resolution 2022E, a resolution of the city of Fairway, Kansas, to levy a property tax rate exceeding the revenue neutral rate. Nathan, will you please call the roll?
We need a motion in a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. May I have a motion, please?
Mayor, I move that we approve Resolution 2022-E, which is a resolution of the City of Fairway, Kansas, to levy a property tax rate exceeding the revenue neutral rate.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve Resolution 2022E. Nathan, please call the roll.
Borowski?
Yes.
Watkins?
Yes?
Smith?
Yes.
Busick?
No.
Rogers?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Levin?
Yes.
Keys?
Yes.
Resolution 2022E passes 7-1. Item C, consider 2023 budget and the 2023 through 2027 capital improvement plan. Is there a motion for that?
I'd make the motion to approve the 2023 budget as submitted and the 2023 to 2027 capital improvement plan.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the budget for 2023 and the CIP plan is presented. Nathan, will you please call the roll?
Broski?
Yes.
Watkins?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Busick?
No.
Rogers?
Yes.
Bailey? Levin?
Yes.
Keys?
Yes.
The 2023 budget and the CIP plan is presented are approved by a vote of 7-1. All right, at this time I would like to close the public hearing and we will move on to item D on new business. Consider memorial and donation request for a park bench at Peterson Park. Bryce?
Yep. So we got this we got this application in last month, and Tim Stark is a resident of Mission, but obviously I put down the background there. But him and his mother used to bring him to Peterson Park back in the day, and really enjoyed their time there. And now, since his mother has passed, he'd like to honor her with a memorial bench and plaque. We have similar ones elsewhere inside Peterson Park. We already have the actual place that this would go, the plaque would go. There's already an updated bench there, so we would use the funds that they would pay in towards the bench to update one of the other benches that is a little less, that needs to be replaced, hopefully by the drinking fountain at the park. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Council, any questions for Bryce? Yes, John Allen.
Fully supportive. I just have a couple of questions. Do we have like an application process for this, or is it just upon request?
Yep, so there's an application. I put that in the packet there. Yep.
Thank you. And then what happens, so for example, this bench is getting replaced with this donated bench money. What happens when that bench needs to be replaced? Does this stay the bench in perpetuity, I assume?
Basically, so the benches we replace it with are with recycled plastic, so that last farther than you and I will. So they should be there for quite a while. It's a bronze memorial plaque that'll be there. There's other ones at the park that you can see that they've held up very well.
And but at some point it does need to be replaced. It'll stay a memorial bench forever.
That's the plan.
Okay.
The policy also does allow for the city to relocate if necessary. So if there's going to be an expansion or a renovation and we need to move a bench or the renovation, it wouldn't make sense for a bench to be there, we are allowed to relocate that. We have to do our best to let the family know that we've had to relocate it to some other portion of the city.
Any other questions or comments? All right. We are ready for a motion. Thank you. It's a good thing you guys are here tonight. Is there any public comment on this item D, the memorial bench at Peterson Park? Nathan on Zoom? All right. Now I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move we approve the memorial and donation request for a park bench at Peterson Park.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we accept the memorial and donation for a park bench at Peterson Park by Mr. Stark in memory of Diane Stark. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Passes unanimously. Bryce, please express our thank you to Mr. Stark from the council and the city.
Will do.
Okay, item E. Consider feature tree removal request by Chris George Holmes for a tree located at 4218 West 59th Street, Fairway, Kansas 66205. Bill, is that you?
Yeah, I just put basically information into the packet. I mean, this is ultimately a governing body decision. The tree's in decent shape. It is iron deficient, much like the large oak that's inside the fence at the park. You know how it has the light green leaves and not the deep dark green leaves that everything else does. So it's iron deficient, so it's going to require ongoing maintenance. There's a few dead limbs in it, but if this is not granted, it will cause a significant redesign of the house because it's dead in the center, and they plan on putting the driveway dead in the center of the house as well, which would encroach significantly on the root system, and the tree probably would not survive. We have granted this before in the past on Lockton Lane, right across from Mary Sinclair house that was built on the east side of the road. Instead of flip-flopping the driveway, the governing body did grant them the removal of a feature tree as well. I believe it was a 34 or 36-inch pin oak. So there's precedent for this before. I mean, it's a reasonable request as long as they pay into the tree fund.
Okay, questions for Bill? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this topic? Yes, sir. Okay, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Caleb George, 6830 Beverly, Overland Park, 66204. I'm here representing Chris George Homes. As a developer, we never want to remove any tree, let alone a feature tree. We understand a significant part of Fairway's desirability is the mature trees and the tree-lined streets. This is our 6th new home that we've constructed in Fairway over the past 2 to 3 years. We've never asked or needed to remove any tree. We are always willing to make design changes and work with the lot to avoid this. This particular lot with the tree directly in the middle and the requirement, having the driveway 20 feet off of the tree to avoid disruption of the root system really makes it challenging to keep the tree. Even with a significant redesign, it would be very difficult to have a 2-car garage with a accessible approach to the garage for this particular lot. Yeah, and that's really my point in asking is it just doesn't work with this type of lot to do a kind of a traditional 2-car garage without having a very odd and inaccessible curved driveway going into a single or 2-car garage. We would look at flipping it. It just doesn't do any good. We would look at some minor redesign, even pushing the garage to the far side of the lot. We'd have to take out that 24-inch tree, but we still would only have a 10-foot approach, and it would have to swoop into the 2-car garage. So I very much appreciate your consideration on the matter. And again, we love building in Fairway, and our end goal is to not remove trees ever. So,
any questions?
Mayor, if I could just add that this home has been approved by Planning Commission, but its approval is contingent upon your action tonight. So if the governing body declines this request, then that automatically means a decline in the Planning Commission's approval as well. So just as an FYI, this has been through Planning Commission, so it would not need to go back.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you for listening to our budget meeting.
You're welcome.
You were very patient.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Who has a question?
Yeah, I was going to, on
Okay,
the,
Jenna, you go first.
ladies first.
I'm sorry for walking away so fast.
I'm having trouble on the map seeing that the tree is directly in the center. I think you said it was right in the center, but the app says it's nearly in the center, and it looks like it's kind of different.
Yeah, I believe that it's centered going east to west. I believe it's a 70-foot lot. I believe it's about 30 feet from the west. So, 40 feet on the east side and 30 feet on the right side, or on the west side. So when I was trying to make it work without having to come talk to you all, my consideration would be we could take the 24-inch tree down on the right, or on the east side, and try to shift it over, but it was just going to be a total rework. And again, it would be a kind of one of those houses that you see and you're going, oh, they had to redesign the whole house to stay away from the tree. Like it would have been kind of an obvious, to my thing, like deficiency of the home build. So that to your answer, I don't think it's dead center. I think it's just a little off dead center by about 5 feet.
Okay. And is this a house? Is there a homeowner already, or is this for sale?
There is not. It will be for sale.
And can we fit a house on this particular lot that had one car garage?
You could do a one-car garage on that. From a developer point of view, it would be a much tougher sale. It wouldn't be really financially viable in terms of what the lot cost was versus what we'd be kind of what our top purchase price would be on a single car garage home.
Okay, but it would fit without having to.
It would. You would have to you would have to design the house. You would have to. I mean, it would be a completely different house than what we have here. But you could design a house with a single car garage and avoid disrupting the tree, as long as the garage was on the far east side of the lot. I believe you could have a 10-foot driveway going in or 8-foot and make it work. But from a developer or a homeowner point of view, I can't see that as a desirable home.
Well, as someone with a one-car garage, I think my home's desirable. But in this case, most of the houses only do have one-car garage. Do you know what percentage have two-car garages?
I do. I do not. I guess my only frame of reference is the new homes being built. I would say, 95% of them are going to be 2 or 3 car garage. But again, I haven't done research on that.
David?
No. You could be able to plant a new tree. You take one out, you put a new one in, another one in.
Hang on just a second. We'll get to that. David?
That was actually my question. Would you be willing to plant a new tree?
Yes.
If maybe not, could be a different type of tree, but.
Yes. The short answer is yes. I know on the application.
Yeah, I think the application said you would.
Yeah, the application said
provides that they can actually deduct that off of what they pay into the tree fund.
That's part of the policy.
Yeah. So I mean, our preference would be to replant a tree that's approved on the right-of-way tree list, and again, to that point, deduct it off of what we'd be paying anyway.
For example, it's a 31.5-inch tree. If they planted a 2-inch caliper tree, that'd knock it down to 29.5. They'd pay $29.50 in instead of $31.50 into the tree fund.
You can't plant a 31.5-inch tree, right? Like, how long was it going to take for a 2-inch tree to become a 31.5-inch tree?
More than my lifetime.
Right, exactly.
And I'm assuming that took care of your question?
Thank you.
Okay. And it's part of the policy.
And to that point, I do think, if we're spending the $31.50 on to go to the tree preservation fund, I mean, our goal would be to find a middle ground of a large caliper plantable tree to go in the place of it, just because, again, it would provide some value to the home, as opposed to just going into the general tree preservation fund. It would go directly onto the slot, which would help.
I can also say you get a diminishing return once you get much above 2.5-inch caliper tree. I mean, you're going to pay a lot of money with a low survival rate once you get much bigger than that.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
That's interesting.
Mike,
David?
I'm just trying to get a frame of reference. The current home is a one-garage home, and the garage and the driveway are on the west side. I want to make sure I heard you correctly. You're proposing that the new home have a 2-car garage on the west side again, or are you moving it to the east side?
The 2-car would be on the east side because that's on our initial application. I actually wasn't aware of the 20 feet away from the tree. So we kind of had it set up where we have more room on the east side versus the west side for the lot. The current driveway as is would be grandfathered in, but you wouldn't be able to go in with, it's closer than 20 feet to the tree. So the current driveway that's on the single car garage on the west side would not be approved without, under the current rules.
And but as you're drawing this, you're trying to keep the 24-inch tree? or is that being,
No, the 24-inch tree would stay.
that's what I said, you're trying to keep that tree.
Yes.
But you're losing the 36-inch tree.
Yeah, but it wouldn't, again, we couldn't shift it over any, even with just a I guess a reasonable design modification. The 24-inch tree would then definitely have to go, but I don't think we'd still be able to meet the 20 feet away from the 31.5-inch tree that we're discussing. The 20 feet, in my head, the math was if that tree is approximately 30 feet from the west lot line, that gives us 40 feet to the east lot line, and then you would deduct the 6.5 feet roughly setback, and then 20 feet from the tree for the allowance for the concrete, additional foot for the tree, so you'd be down to somewhere around like 12 feet for an approach and to going into the house. And again, that's not with the current plans. That would also require a significant redesign of the two-car garage home.
And it looks, it's hard to tell from the pictures, but, it looks like the garage is not on the edge of the east side. There's more house to the east, and there's obviously a lot of house to the west.
Correct.
I'm just trying to think, but the garage could have been located farther either direction, still be within the building lines, and would that allow for the tree to be retained?
It would not. We would still be 10 feet away from the tree versus the 20 feet that is required.
The way I understand it, and the way I think you're saying, the problem here is the driveway where it has to be is less than 20 feet from the tree. Is there some middle ground where we can keep the tree, he still pays into the tree fund, we cross our fingers and hope it survives? There's plenty of driveways close to trees.
Oh, absolutely. He can place the driveway in, but the maintenance and future maintenance of that tree is his. Once he pays into the tree fund, he can light it on fire. It does not matter on our maintenance schedule what happens to that tree.
Yeah, well, Dan asked, maybe we're asking, I was going to ask the same question a different way. I was going to say not paying the tree fund. Is there a different way to sculpt the driveway wherever you put the garage?
Not with that tree. It's almost in the center of the property. And you cannot expand the driveway any closer to the tree line if you were to put it on the west side of the property. And if you were to put it on the east side of the property, there's no way to get it 20 feet outside the root zone. It is impossible
That was
on a 70-foot wide drive.
But my question would be is recognizing that and recognizing that it doesn't have to be a straight line, and it's not. It's pinching in already, correct, the driveway? It's wider at the house than it is at the street.
Correct, and that's also a city requirement.
Is an alternative position that we grant a waiver on the 20-foot rule? Is that what you're asking, Dan? That we don't take out the tree, but we grant.
I would not feel comfortable with that whatsoever.
An exemption on the 20-foot rule is my question, and so then I ask why is that not a viable alternative?
Because we find people for getting inside that protected root zone whenever they build a house. Why would we exempt it now?
Okay, so then if we did that, we would need to not grant an exception, but let them buy the tree?
Yes, which is what I said earlier. Once they pay into the tree fund, they can keep the tree up. They don't have to knock it down.
But if they buy the tree, they can also take it down.
Correct.
But
they don't have to.
Clarification, if they pay into the tree fund, who takes the tree down? The city or them?
They do.
So they pay into the tree fund and they pay to take the tree down?
Correct. The paying into the tree fund is to recoup funds that we've already spent maintaining that tree.
So just to be crystal clear, so what I think I heard you say was if they paid into the tree fund, they would have the option to keep the tree there.
Correct. But all future maintenance is theirs.
But you have no desire to keep the tree there?
No, I have desire to keep the tree because, again,
It's a selling point.
Yeah, it's a selling point, and there's expense to taking the tree down. I guess, and this is a home we would sell, and we would disclose this information to the homeowner because I think most would prefer the tree there versus no tree there. But my question would be, and maybe this isn't who I need to be asking is, how, is there just like a map with like dots that say these people are responsible for these street trees?
Yes.
And these,
Yep.
Okay, all right, well,
Yes.
perfect. No, so that, I mean, again, to that I did not know that, so I'm I
That's
appreciate
how
the
much we
information.
like our trees.
No, and that's perfect because, again, to that point, so as a developer, from my point of view, we've run into this in other cities where, or people say you're disturbing the root system, that the tree's going to die, and I certainly understand why the city has to say, well, you need to take it down now, so that expense is done and realized by the developer versus potentially a homeowner who disagrees later. But from my perspective is, if the homeowner is going to be charged, whether it's charged from us up front or charged from them, in 5 years, if the tree does die, I think most of them would rather, even if it's renting the tree for 5 years, they would rather do that and then pay for that, down the road. So, that's what my intention would be, is we would disclose that to the potential buyer, saying, hey, we have the option to take this tree down, and we can do that for X amount, but my preference is that you keep it, and you essentially are realizing that savings, and you might have to pay this money later to take the tree down if it dies. So, I mean, that's where I would be at. We certainly wouldn't take it down unless it was required.
And Bill, I don't want to quibble with you, but I love to quibble.
It's your favorite sport and superpower.
Yeah, but what I don't see that as apples to apples. Yes, we fine people for violating the tree protection ordinance because they don't ask for permission first. Here, I would view this as an alternative where the builder is asking permission to save the tree.
To let them encroach on the root zone, which we don't allow people to do.
Correct.
And I say I would not feel comfortable with that.
I understand, but in this case, with such a nice tree, I'd be tempted. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Is that a reasonable alternative to just having the tree taken down completely, or having them or us say no? We value the tree so much that we're going to make you redesign your entire home and find a way to put the driveway somewhere, or go to and I understand 2-car garage houses sell for a lot more than a 1-car garage house. I understand the economics of it. That's what I'm just trying to figure out, if that is a reasonable alternative, knowing that.
What is your reasonable alternative? Paying into the tree fund and leaving the tree? Or granting an exemption where they don't pay into the tree?
That we allow them to build, that they would pay into the, it sounds like we need to have them pay into the tree fund. Well, I don't know if we do, but grant them an exception from the 20-foot rule where the tree can possibly survive.
I don't see it as an exception if they pay into the tree fund. I don't care what they do around the tree.
Well, my point is, if they pay into the tree fund, then they can just take the tree down and we've lost the tree.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't pay into the tree fund and we grant them the 20-foot exception, maybe the tree survives, maybe not.
And that would be your choice, but I would highly recommend against it.
Okay, that's what I'm wondering, but you don't think that's a viable
No,
option?
I do not think that's a viable option.
I see that fraught with problems down the road.
All right, that's what I wanna hear.
Absolutely.
I'd be
When we're finding people for doing that, and then we're going to exempt someone else to do it, I treat everyone the same, David.
Okay,
and I see this as a huge conflict.
And I'd be more inclined to do that if the house had already sold, but we're likely having a change of ownership.
Okay.
That's a big old tree.
Yes, that's a
I wouldn't want to buy I wouldn't want to buy a new house with the potential of that having a quarter of the root zone on one side. Yeah. That might do a little bit of damage.
Mm-hmm.
This might be a question for Nathan or Bryce, I don't know, but when developers come to, and they get a plot of land and they're designing it, do we tell them, by the way, if you want a tree to be removed, you have to go to city council, and kind of what information do we provide on the front end?
Sure. So the answer is it depends.
Okay.
So if it's, frequently now we see a lot of we have frequent builders in town. So upon their first application to the Planning Commission, they're given all the information about the tree protection ordinance, and then whomever comes and pulls the permit is given that information as well. So we have different levels of tree. Obviously, this is talking about a feature tree because it's over 30 inches in diameter. If it's less than 30 inches in diameter, staff has the discretion through our tree manager, who is the Public Works Director, to give that authority to remove the tree so long as they pay into the tree fund. That can be done without getting to this level here. So once we go out and we evaluate and say, okay, yeah, that's a feature tree, then they're told that they can either come to City Council and request approval, or they'll go rework their plan or do whatever they want to do. So the fact that Fairway has a tree protection ordinance in place, it's only going to surprise first-time developers in the city.
Okay.
And I would say, just to go back to address what was said earlier, I would agree that, if regardless, if we're going to say, yes, you can put your driveway within 20 feet of the tree, I think they absolutely have to pay into the tree fund to be consistent with the practice. But to Bill's point, once they pay into the tree fund and the city has been made whole on its expenses for the tree maintenance, we always encourage them to try to hold on to the tree if they can. And there have been situations where even people who have come to this council, they've said, we're going to keep the tree, but we know we need to pay into the tree fund. And then there have been times where during their building process, something has changed and then the tree actually does come down, or there are some cases where the trees still exist. So it is not an absolute that once you pay into the tree fund, you have to cut the tree down. What is absolute is that after you pay into the tree fund, the city will not address the tree from a preventative maintenance standpoint anymore. Now, in the event that we get 5-10 years down the road and it's a new homeowner, let's say the tree does die, the city will not pay to have that tree removed like we would other right-of-way trees that we maintain. However, if we would run into a situation where the homeowner would refuse to do it, then we would follow our normal code process and move down the road of abating an unsafe tree, where we would remove it and then bill the property owner. So it's not to say that the city would never touch the tree, because if the tree dies and the owner doesn't take care of it, we will intervene and take care of it. So, but it's not an absolute that they have to or that the tree will come down if it's purchased.
So that's really helpful. So at the time of the design, we were aware that this would have to come to the city council level to get the tree removed, or was there confusion there?
There was confusion. It was probably my oversight. Again, we had basically been told to avoid all right-of-way trees at all costs in Fairway, to remove them. So that's what we aimed to do. And so when not knowing exactly how the house was going to fit on it, when I received the plot plan, the document there, my first thought was, good, we missed the trees, we're good. And then when I submitted it, I was alerted to the 20-foot rule, which we just must, I just overlooked it, or I don't remember it from a previous application, because it had never, we had never run into it before. So we just kind of, knock on wood, the last 5 or 6 projects we'd been able to avoid it. So it was news to me, but I'm sure it's in the document, the packet that I received several years ago, and I looked at it then, but I just didn't put it together for this particular project.
And I'm not sure how many right-of-way trees they've had to protect, but they've not had one violation to this point in all the homes they've built.
I guess my final question is, and I can't claim ownership of this because I heard it at a Mission Hills ARB meeting, one of their councils, because I was representing a client, and this is will be a new house. The existing house is knocked down, so you have basically a blank canvas, and you either know or should know the rules. Could you design a 2-car garage house that would provide a mechanism to keep the feature tree there, or is it just impossible to site a driveway with a 2-car garage on that lot and save the tree?
It would be impossible with a traditional 2-car garage and standard 16-foot approach. If you went to, again, some really curvy driveway, I'm not saying you couldn't design one, but just the distances don't allow for kind of a semi-direct pull into the garage and keep the 20 feet from the tree. So kind of waffling a little bit, but no, it would be impossible to design a fully functioning driveway 2-car garage on this lot.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Is there any public comment from anyone on Zoom or the other 2 individuals in the audience? Okay. Nobody there? Okay. All right, I will entertain a motion.
Actually, I still have a little discussion.
Okay, go ahead.
So what are we actually voting on here?
So you'll be voting for the approval for them to purchase the right-of-way tree.
And at that point, it's completely up to them whether or not they take that tree
Correct.
out or not.
Correct.
And now he's aware of all this information.
Correct.
So that's all we're voting on.
Yep.
And the
So we would want to remove the word removal. Consider the feature tree
Yeah.
purchase request.
Sure.
Instead of removal. Now, my only concern, I don't want to okay. My only concern is, because I've heard it since I've been mayor, is that this is not communicated to the homeowner, the buyer. Because, not accusing you that you said you would, I trust that you would. But we've had new homeowners not have been told. And that puts us in a very difficult position. That's my only concern. Sure.
Can we keep discussing for a minute before
Sure.
we vote?
Uh-huh.
Because thank you so much. I think great gag. I get it. Understand. It concerns me because the default should be to protect our feature trees, and there's nothing particularly exceptional about this situation. This isn't a long-time resident. We could think of a lot of reasons I think that are exceptional, and here it's just someone wants to build a house and they want to profit off of it, which is fine, but I don't think that should trump our city policy. I mean, our focus on Fairway, right? Like, we have a whole article, the established canopy of mature trees is a huge benefit for the city beyond aesthetics. Like, we're the city of trees, so I think this is really a dangerous precedent to be setting, and I think that I'm concerned with just granting these, particularly because any new tree that's granted is going to be much smaller. As Bill said, it's going to take more than our lifetime to rebuild, and I think that there's benefits to the really big trees in terms of environmental sustainability that are not going to be captured when we have a smaller tree. So I'm just concerned about this as a city policy.
We aren't making a policy, but
concerned about creating a precedent, and I know it's not precedential,
no.
but it kind of is, because, Bill, we've said in our documents we've done this before, so then somebody hears that and thinks we've done it before, we'll just do it
right.
again.
It's going against the current policy.
It's going against the current policy of,
Not
putting our
creating a
trees first.
policy, but going against the current policy. Yeah. John Allen?
I would just say,
I think
having
the last time the request for a featured tree removal, I believe, was like 10 years ago. I think David was the only one on council at that time, and you, Mayor.
I would just say that, having spent a few years on the Planning Commission, that body deals with pretty much just exceptions to our code, which is because the code is to set a standard, but it can't fit every lot in every situation, and therefore that body pretty much exists. Well, they do codes too, but all the things that come before them are for exceptions. And they grant most of them, not all of them, and every time it's are we setting a precedent? And it's usually did the builder, did the homeowner consider all of these things? Were there options available to them? And on this one, although I went into this very worried about the tree, don't want to lose the tree, I don't think this lot is conducive to a modern 2022 home build for someone who may want to live in Fairway in a 2022 home. So for me, I'm comfortable with the exception on this one and not setting precedent or policy for that reason, in that every lot is different. And I think a future lot, I could say no to this if it were an option to build it. That's kind of the tough for me anyway.
Fair points. I think the point about the lot is important because, I don't know, maybe this lot just isn't a two-car garage lot, right? We're in Ward 4. I've heard enough from people in Ward 4 and smaller homes that those are becoming less prevalent in Ward 4, and so to the extent there's a tree that's precluding this from building a two-car garage home in a situation where, again, it's not a long-time resident, like this is a house that's going to be sold on the market, I just think this is a situation where we can really follow our own policy and protect the tree.
Anyone else?
So this house is at the end of my block. so I walk by it a couple of times a day, and I'm okay with it. I don't think it's that great of a tree, to be honest. I feel like limbs fall off of it all the time. I don't like to walk my dog under it. I kind of feel like 59th Street is kind of a mess anyway, but I know that's sort of an insider deal for where I live. Those trees are dying. There have been two houses west of this that, or maybe one had to be removed by the city and the other was removed by the owner. They're old and they're falling apart, and the limbs are falling and crashing on cars on 59th. So I would just say I have a different perspective that's maybe not as mathematical, but I feel okay with it given the size and scale of that lot and where that house is. And just because even to me, maybe it's just because of the depth of the tree, it almost makes that lot seem much more shallow. It doesn't even seem like the same lot as my house size. I know it is, right? But it just is distorted somehow. And that tree is way too big in my opinion.
It's really squatty. It's not as tall as it should be taller for as wide as it is.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, though, Bill, you said it's above average in terms of its health, correct? So it's not one of the
No, I said it has some health issues. It needs, it has some dead limbs in it, and it's iron deficient for sure. So it's going to require, I don't want to say significant, but ongoing maintenance, to turn that around.
Sorry, I thought the memo, I'm trying to pull it up, said that it was above average health. Can't pull it up right now.
Well, sure.
Yeah, we have a lot of pin oaks that are in way worse health than that, for sure.
This isn't one where
And according to Kim Baumberger's report from 2017, most of our pin oaks are in poor health. This isn't one of the 80-year-old pin oaks that is going to die tomorrow. Our average probably isn't average for a specimen tree. How's that?
Well, I just want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not a tree doctor, so I don't know. I was just presenting evidence as a resident, and where I feel safe walking on a curb line or not. And that house is not where I feel safe walking on the curb line. I'll walk on the other side of the curb.
Yeah, the memo reads, this is the memo to us from Bill. The tree is in above average shape and only needs some minor maintenance at this time. It also appears to have iron deficiencies.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? I'm going to wait longer. Oh, good.
I'd
okay.
make a motion if you're okay with it.
Hang on a minute. I don't want to be accused of cutting anyone off. I've been accused of that. Okay, John Allen, go ahead.
Mayor, you need to ask for public comment.
Oh, gosh.
We did once. He spoke. That was just a joke. Okay.
Any other public comment? Nope. Anyone on Zoom? I did ask. Okay, well, I asked twice. John Allen, go ahead.
See if I can remember it. All right. I'd like to make a motion to allow the featured tree purchase request by Chris George Homes for a tree located at 4218 West 59th Street, Fairway, Kansas 66205, with the requirement that the current property owner disclose to any future buyers that the tree is the sole responsibility of the homeowner.
Second.
Okay, hang on a minute. All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the feature tree purchase request by Chris George Homes for a tree located at 4218 West 59th Street, Fairway, Kansas 66205, requiring disclosure to the new homeowner. Nathan, we got that?
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, we will vote. All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed, no? No. All right, 7 yes, 1 no. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. All right, the last item, F, consider final plat for 4200 and 4210 Shawnee Mission Parkway. Nathan, is that you?
I can just speak to this. So you have seen this before. This is just the final version. In fact, we know that there'll be an amended version down the road. So, I mean, technically it's a final plat, but there'll be other changes as utilities and those sorts of things get ironed out down the road. And I confirmed with Basel again today, the only change on here is the name. Otherwise, you have seen this exact thing before.
Is the name?
Is the name, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you mentioned that, what name has changed? The owner, the
Oh. I
City of
can't
Fairway's
give you that
not
answer.
different.
Yeah, I cannot give you that answer.
But the lines haven't changed.
Correct.
Thank you.
Well, I think, Nathan, you said something to me about they've established a new.
There is a new entity, so this is part of this process, and I know, Rich, you might be able to speak to this, but there was some confusion in the beginning about whether or not a replat, because it's whether or not the replat would need to occur prior to the sale. And it was our zoning attorney said no, that she didn't think that was the case. But it went back and forth, and they were doing these small tweaks as they're trying to figure out the final utilities and all that sort of thing. So once it was discovered that they didn't need to go through with that they could go through with the sale with this not done, that process, I think, is running concurrently. So this is just a formal piece that the council has to approve any replats that come before them from the Planning Commission. And again, it is the Planning Commission's recommendation that this be approved. It may have been part of the piece that's going to be outside the scope of the development. So there is in the replat here, there is this section right here that has been identified for future use as a standalone retail. So that's outside the rest of the project scope here for the active adult complex. I can't say for 100% sure that's what it is. And Kim was out today, so I didn't get a chance to talk with her about it.
I sure can't remember everything you talked about. Down here at the bottom left, MREM Fairway Parking LLC, Platform Investments LLC, Platform Ventures LLC. It sounds like they're just creating some sort of onion. What they're talking about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's what
they used to be before Platform Ventures.
But it's MREM Fairway Parking LLC.
That's the owner, yeah, so the parking structure is its own plat.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? Public comment? Nope. All right, is there a motion?
Mayor, I move that we approve the final plat as presented for 4200 and 4210 Shawnee Mission Parkway.
Second, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. That was Joe? All right. It has been moved and seconded that we approve the final plat for 4200, 4210 Shawnee Mission Parkway. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Passes unanimously. I will tack on a comment here. The permits have been pulled.
Applications have been submitted.
Okay. They've been submitted, and demolition is scheduled to start September 26th?
Correct. And it'll be done in phases, so they'll start with the parking garage first.
Okay. Okay. Because I'm starting to get those questions. And
Are they going to try to sell portions of the falling apart fire escape as like
I don't know.
like the final forecourt for?
There's your revenue stream.
We did.
That's how you make up 200 grand.
We did. I did learn from the developers that a large majority of the concrete is going to be recycled as a part of their Green Globe's sustainability certification. So there will be several different piles of concrete out there that will all be fenced in, and they are going to be watering the site regularly to keep dust at a minimum. And then we did, in our pre-con meeting, talk to them about needing to keep all traffic to Shawnee Mission Parkway and not 55th.
Yeah. Okay. All right, we'll move on to governing body comment. During this time, members of the governing body will be given the opportunity to speak about matters related to the city. No formal action will be taken at this time. Does anyone have anything they'd like to bring forward?
Mayor?
Yes.
I don't know if this would be Bill or it would be Bryce, but there is, as you enter into the Shawnee Indian Mission, going toward the north building, the waste, dog waste container is gone now.
That's Bryce.
I removed it. It was the foundation, so that was only put there for a volunteer asked to put that there.
Okay.
Kathy Dix, when she lived in Fairway, she maintained it,
Okay.
and then she did not. There was nobody to take over for her for that maintenance, so we removed it.
So there's no longer going to be one there.
No, but there is there's a dumpster on the other side of the street in the
Yes.
parking lot to be able to throw, and we have a sign there that says "Pick up after your dogs."
Because people are leaving them still there at that place.
Okay.
Oh, joy.
Yeah.
Old habits die hard.
Yeah, so, no, but I just wanted to know, make sure. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Anyone else?
Final
Jenna?
reminder, Saturday is the Northeast Johnson County Sustainability Fair at Sylvester Powell, 9 to 12, family friendly, for-profit, nonprofit companies will have tables. Spread the word, tell your friends, should be a fun event.
Nathan's our starting event Saturday also, is that the next Saturday?
Same. It's this Saturday.
Thank you.
You could do both.
Yeah.
Any other comments or, okay, no? All right, we'll close the governing body comment. Nathan, we no longer have an audience. Is there anyone on Zoom to comment for the public comment for items not on the agenda? All right, we'll close that. I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Great.
Motion
We
to
are
adjourn.
adjourned.